me when I got up in July and realised that was the case. But I've spent quite a lot of my time in UK working in Scotland. Moved overseas to Afghanistan, for all places, in 2010 for a couple of years. Moved to Qatar for a few years, and then 2014 moved to Dubai.
Wow. So interesting pass there, Jim. Lots of places visited around the whole region.
I've been to all sorts of places, and most of the rough places were in Scotland.
Mike?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Rimmer, MEP Director for Ramble in the Middle East. Been based in Dubai for about 9 years now, but I'm originally from the UK. Got around 17 years of MEP industry experience. It's quite interesting because I've now realised that I've worked longer in the Middle East than I did in the UK. So it kind of shows you how time flies in the Middle East. My 2-year plan, which was the original plan, is now 9 years young. So that's the intro from me.
Excellent, thank you. And John?
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Rippingale, Managing Director of Sudler's Consulting. I've been in the Middle East for almost 8 years now. Sudler's Consulting, we specialise in data centre consultancy services, design, testing, commissioning, technical authority role. I actually came over to Dubai just under 8 years ago to open their office here. So I will know very well about starting fresh in the Middle East and for a new company and growing into the company it is today. So look forward to answering your questions on this webinar.
Excellent. And last but not least, over to Scott.
Absolutely not least, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott McKeever. I'm Regional Director of MEP at Cundall. I've been in the Middle East since 2013, so 9 years, although 2 of those years I did go back to the UK with AECOM. And then came back. I've been in the Middle East with Bureau Happold. Most of my time was with Haida and then Arcadis, and only in the past, I think, 7 months that I move across to Cundall.
Excellent stuff. Thank you all very much. So let's dive straight into the discussion. The first topic that we've got to talk through is the technical approaches for MEP design, or to MEP design in the UAE compared to Europe. So if I can hand over to you guys to have a bit of a discussion.
Who's going to tee it off then? You want me to go first then? Go then.
Go then.
Yeah. I was going to say, I remember when I first started getting involved in projects overseas and the Afghanistan stuff and Qatar and things like that, and I was surprised at some of the old practices that were used at that time across the region in terms of design and things like that. I mean, MEP design's MEP design. The basic physics and things is always the same. But some of the local practices and the contracts and the way that things are set up here seem a bit backwards, especially if you maybe come from the UK or Europe and you've been used to dealing with more progressive contracts and things like that. I mean, sometimes you look at things here and you always think, am I just vanished back in the 1980s, and it just gives you a bit of a surprise. But I find that, in the last 8 years being here, things have moved on at a great pace, as they do tend to do in the Middle East. And, they've gone from maybe being, behind in some of these things to, in some instances, especially in some of the MEP design and some of the more smart building technologies, to being ahead of where places are and things are in the UK. So there's lots of exciting challenges that I find in the Middle East, and there's always someone wanting to do something different. That's maybe how I'll leave that one. There's always someone wanting to do something different and challenge it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so go after you, mate.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree with that, Jim. I think one of the big differences between Middle East and the UK is obviously it's the projects, it's the client expectations, it's the sort of the timelines that we're expected to meet in this region. They've become the norm now. They're very much shorter and more aggressive than the UK. As a result of that, it sort of drives a different design strategy. So most of the big players in the Middle East now would have, let's call it a production office somewhere in the Philippines, India, Romania, or somewhere in Europe, whereby that would be the engine room. So the timelines are so aggressive. Clients like to change their mind so often that without that big engine room to adapt and make these changes and react to these different client requirements, we just wouldn't be able to get through the projects. That's probably the biggest difference I can sort of just straight off the bat say between the UK and the Middle East. Go on, Nick.
No, I was going to say, well, two things. To go back to Jim's original point, I completely agree with that. But about the, I think sometimes, particularly when I first started, sort of in the 2008-10s, there was quite a lot of resistance to new ideas. There was very much an attitude of, well, this is what I've done on previous projects. And so there was a real resistance to doing anything different. But when a new idea catches, it catches extremely fast, and then it's everywhere. And definitely, I think in the last 3 or 4 years, people are much more open to innovative ideas, to energy saving, to looking at different approaches to engineering solutions, and particularly with the adoption of BIM and digitalization. I mean, when I joined WME 5 years ago, when we were doing BIM, what was happening was the designs were being done in schematic design in CAD, because everyone said, well, we don't get architectural models in BIM. We can't do BIM before DD. And so people were then taking what they'd done at SD and redrafting the whole thing in BIM at the start of DD. And that was 4 or 5 years ago. Now we're doing BIM models at concept, digital calculations, everything done from the Revit model from day one. And that change has happened extremely quickly. And now when we look at what's happening, particularly with some of these giga projects in Saudi, anyone who's working with the major PIF developers, the BIM requirements are incredibly onerous, and they're challenging for everybody to try and reevaluate how you work, how you're delivering your projects, to make sure that you're meeting these expectations. And as I say, when things change here, they change really fast. And the other thing I'd say, again, obviously myself and Scott have worked together for a number of years, and he's absolutely right. The programs are super challenging. It forces you you have to make good decisions, but you have to make good decisions quick. You do not have the luxury of time, particularly in the concept phase, to be doing months of studies of options. It does not happen. You could be doing a project of several 100,000 square meters, and you're expected to get out a concept with a coordinated plan and strategies in 6 weeks. That's not especially uncommon. And it requires you to have a good idea of what will work and really focus very quickly on the right solutions for projects. But for me personally, coming from the UK, the big difference that I saw straight away and that continues to blow me away is the scale. I'll never forget the last job I did I'm a mechanical engineer by background, in the UK for Max Fordham's it was a school project, and I think we had something like 200 kilowatts worth of chillers on it. It was all naturally ventilated. The first job I designed at WSP was a 10 megawatt chiller plant. I went from 200 to 10 megawatt in the space of about 4 months. And, myself and Scott worked on a project. I think Jumeirah Open Beach was 35 megawatt chiller plant, something of that order.
35 megawatts,
and working on 300,000 square meter schemes, all of this kind of stuff. The scale is just, it's incredible, and it's incomparable to anything I saw during my time in the UK.
And those are mid-sized projects.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't even mega projects. They were just jobs. When you're bidding a job and it's 2 50-story towers and it's 120,000 square meters, and you go, no, this one will be easy. That's when you realise that it's just a different scale.
And that was something, Nick, that when I went over my 2-year holiday, when I went back to the UK and worked in the UK for 2 years. So I went back in 2017 to the UK and came back here in 2019. So I was back for 2 years. The first year of that was just a novelty, and the second year was I was persuading my wife to come back out here. But to notice the difference. So I was in a healthcare team back in the UK. I was at ACOM, as I say, leading Cambridge office, and it was healthcare. And the difference in the programs and the speed of things in the UK to here was just polarized. You could see it so clearly. You could work in the UK for, I'll not say hospital, they're very complicated, but you wouldn't even get out of design in 12, 18 months, whereas here you're knocking those things out. Nick and I worked on a hospital in KSA, mega hospital, I think it was, I think it's 1,200 beds, something like 1,700 beds.
Yeah, 500,000 square meters.
Yeah,
1.5 kilometers end to end. That building was.
And I think the design, I think that was within, I think it was about 6 to 9 months. I think we designed that one, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think one of the interesting things, I think Nick touched upon it, was just, program. Some of the programs here are just, very aggressive, and we are starting to look at, how we manage that. Are we looking at digitalization, through automation, with BIM? One thing that I've seen, getting adopted more and more in the Middle East now is kind of computational design, with parametric tools. We're doing kind of projects quicker, not through, more people or, bigger project teams, but for using software, optioneering, trying to reduce, drive energy down or try and reduce the number of materials, so I think that is something that is helping kind of meet these, challenging programs that, are definitely associated with, the legacy Dubai, but also the new giga projects that are coming from, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's almost born out of necessity, isn't it? You have no choice. You have to be, if you've got any chance, you have to work smarter. And to say there's so many things that you can do now with digitalization that can really, really speed up the back end design. And if you can speed up the back end design, that gives you time at the front end to actually make sure you're making the right decisions first. And I think that's kind of key for delivering all of these kind of mega projects that are starting to come through.
It's those right decisions. It's your engineering gut feeling gets used an awful lot in this region. Yeah. When you first start looking at something, you go, actually, the gut feel is this is how it's going to go, and it starts shaping you down that route, doesn't it?
Yeah, yep. Absolutely. Yeah, you get your spidey senses start tingling. And
exactly.
It's so the company I work for, Max Boredoms, their approach was always, every problem starts with the extent of the universe, and then you focus in on the final solution. And whilst that is a wonderful way to work, in the Middle East, very, very rarely do you have that luxury. And you have to go through the right process. You have to look at the viable solutions and get down to a list of, okay, there's 3 or 4 things here. I know we can make these work. Now let's look at these and kind of pick the right solution. But that process, you have to go really, really quickly with it. You don't have the luxury to do anything else.
Yeah. And just quickly, if you don't mind, guys, just referring back to the digitization piece, there's a few candidates that I've spoken to over the last probably 6 to 12 months, I'd say, that haven't necessarily been familiar with it, or the actual process itself. Is there any of the softwares and stuff that you guys could recommend that people could look into to research and find out more information?
Yeah, I think, James, on kind of computational and parametrics, there's a big push, for Rhino, and then you've got Grasshopper, you've got all the insects, you got, Ladybug, there's all these different softwares now. And, when I started industry, IES was just coming out, and now obviously you've got all these parametric kind of front end tools that are really kind of helping us drive innovation, creativity. But, they give us interface to kind of plug into, other tools that help us kind of really develop our designs at the front end. So obviously you can do much more to kind of make decisions quicker, like Nick's saying, that can really kind of, help push the project forward. So I think, if I was, probably given a recommendation, to someone, a graduate or an intermediate engineer, was, really make sure that you're getting to know kind of, you become software savvy, you're looking at parametric, computational, and you know where their interfaces are to kind of really help, drive efficiency, to push projects forward.
100% agree with that, Mike.
Yeah, I would as well. And I'd also add to that, if you're at a more senior level in your career, learn to use Revit. Like, there's no question, within WME, myself, all of our technical directors, associate directors, we got our BIM team to do like a 6-week program, a couple of hours a week to learn. You can't run a factory if you don't know how the machines work. And Revit is so powerful, and there's so much other stuff that could be done around Revit, with Dynamo scripting. And we've recently brought a Revit API programmer on board to actually start working within Revit to develop specific tools. BIM and Revit will be the design tool. Everything will go through the single source of truth, which will be the Revit model. And I think that we're seeing such a rapid increase in the pace of that. I really think everybody, almost at any level of your career, has to have a very, very good understanding of it, because otherwise you're going to get left behind in the next few years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
sorry, Jim.
No, I was just about to say, I mean, any engineer or anyone that's in the MEP industry that can't work in a 3D environment now is going to be looking for something to do in about 5 years' time. Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for those insights, and yeah, some good takeaways for those that are on the webinar to go and do some research if you're not familiar with those, the terminology and the software. What about the positives? What would you say positives working in the Middle East?
Where do we start, James?
The weather.
I like that you're starting with. I like that we're starting with the positives, just to let the audience know we are coming on to the challenges, but we're deciding to talk about the positives first. I mean, for myself, it was firstly coming from the UK was for better weather, even though it is quite warm here in the summer. During my career in the UK, I'd met so many people and friends who had UK wasn't their home. They'd come from America, they'd come from Australia, Europe, different parts of the world, and they seemed to just have such a good time interacting with different cultures, a different way of living that they'd been brought up with. So for my wife and I, coming to the Middle East was coming to something different, and especially in the UAE, there's such a big mixture of people from all over the world. So you get brought into all of their experiences, not just from a personal level, but also from a work-related level. Doing projects in different challenging environments is really enriching and gives you different design ideas on how to get over difficult tasks or challenges, designing to different climatic conditions as an example. So that's a positive from a work aspect. Obviously, people are aware that there's a tax-free environment. There are some taxes. I'd say generally cost of living can be a little bit higher, but again, it does depend on. We'll talk about that on a sort of separate aspect. But one of the big positives for me is, despite the slightly longer hours that we all do work here, is that on your weekends, you've got the ability to feel like you're on holiday, and you can enjoy a wide range of activities. And the last sort of 8 years I've been here, the amount of different sort of leisure activities that are possible has increased significantly. And just driving an hour outside of Dubai, which is a sort of big skyscraper city on the beach, you actually come to sort of a mountainous area near Hatta, and you can go trekking. There's waterfalls, wadis, which flood during different times of the year. It's a completely different landscape. So for those of you who enjoy the outdoors, there's amazing cycling tracks. The Crown Prince is an avid cycler. There's huge cycling tracks in the deserts, huge leisure complexes for swimming, surfing as well, kiteboarding, skydiving. I know a few friends who are avid skydivers. Yeah, I've got a few friends.
You should give it a go. It's brilliant.
It's supposed to be the best place in the world to skydive is Dubai because
really
of what
good.
you can see. Yeah.
You should work for the tourist board.
I've had to try and sell it to my friends so many times, and when people come to visit, they say, "Well, what can we do in Dubai except for sit on the beach and go to Dubai more?" So we've got a nice list of prepared activities to which we never get through. So.
No, exactly. I think John's done kind of the the personal and the social one, but I think from professional, like one of the major benefits from a career perspective, it's just the size of projects. We mentioned it already, but when I was in the UK, you're working on small to medium projects. I knew if I was going to develop quickly, I needed to work on large scale projects that would challenge me technically. If you look at Dubai back then, 9 years ago when I was thinking of coming out, Burj Khalifa, Palm Jumeirah, Dubai Mall, they were continuing to kind of develop these huge schemes. I think, my first 3 or 4 projects were like high-rise towers. I was kind of experienced aspects of design that I hadn't done in the UK. Sustainable targets that probably don't get mentioned as much as they should do. We were doing kind of LEED platinum buildings, and I think one thing I would say that is different to the UK is that you're given, more responsibility, as soon as you kind of land. You're empowered to kind of take projects on, to do roles you've never done. For example, I was doing like design management, lead MEP, 1 or 2 years into kind of my, time in Dubai. But I do feel that, what the Middle East does, which is positive, it does give people like a huge platform to really accelerate their careers. I firmly believe that if I hadn't, moved to, I think I've developed quicker in the Middle East, than what I would have done if I stayed in the UK. And I think all of us on this call, have got some, great projects on our CV just purely because we moved to the Middle East and got that experience.
Yeah.
And how many times has everybody at the call actually thought, right, it must be this time that Dubai is going to slow down and taper off, and then it just goes whoosh again, But that's
every
it's
6
not
months.
just it's not just
up,
the
6
UAE
months
anymore.
down.
It's Saudi, it's Bahrain, it's everywhere. It's just woof. It's just still going. Yeah.
I think it's that traditionally the consulting offices out in the Middle East region were the smaller offices, and that's why, as Michael said, you get exposed to more, and there's less of you to do the same amount of work, and you sometimes to the main headquarter office you're a bit of an afterthought, so you have to do a bit of everything. You start to go outside of your comfort zone. The role that you were doing, it gets expanded on you. There's no one else to do it, and then by simply being there, you have to sort of sink or swim, and then you get the experience and exposure to those projects. But once you do that, you start building momentum. You get trusted by your employer. And then the next thing you're running the company or in a senior director role. So that's been a sort of big benefit for I think all of us on the call here.
Yeah, I mean, I always say to people that that coming to the Middle East is it's like dog years for your career. One year working in Dubai in the Middle East industry is like 2 or 3 in the UK. I mean, I think you look at the people on this call that are in very, very senior positions, and the reality is that if we'd stayed in the UK, there's a very real chance that we wouldn't be anywhere near the positions we're in today. And it's because when you're in the Middle East, as you say, the pace of life, the pace of work, the pressure, what you're exposed to, it forces you to grow up very, very fast in a work position. And I genuinely don't think I would be in the position I'm in now if it wasn't for coming out here and the experience I've had. And I'll also go back to something that Mike said at the start with his 2-year plan. So many people that you speak to that have been in Dubai 10 years, 13 years. I'm 13 years myself. I was here for 1 year. I've come out, whatever happens, even if myself and my wife hated it, we will stick it out for 1 year. And now, 2 kids and 13 years later, and really I've never really looked back, to be honest, because exactly as John says, it's a really great place to be. It's got its challenges like anywhere. Like I've got 2 young kids here that are kind of like fantastic schools and good opportunities, and the projects just keep coming. So all of us could reel off some amazing jobs. I mean, for me, UAE Pavilion at Expo with Calatrava was a real highlight. But there's any number of 5-star hotels, regional shopping malls, and that you can list. And as well as that, one of the reasons that I came here in the first place was because I wanted to see a different part of the world. And I've done work I've been to India, I don't know how many times. I've been, most of the countries in the GCC. I've been to Iran, I've been to Pakistan. I've got to go to places that I probably never, ever, ever would have gone to if I'd stayed working in the UK, getting the train down to Brighton to do a school project,
And it's
I mean,
so much more
one thing I
accessible
always
everywhere,
find
isn't it?
it's really, really interesting how many different nationalities you end up working with.
Yeah.
You look around the office, and we did a bit of a talk up here, and it's like, well, we're nudging 50 guys now, but we've got 16 different nationalities. Yeah. And you go into the lunchroom and sit down and have a chat with some people, and people are yabbering away and eating different things and whatnot. It's a great fun. Yeah.
And I imagine that helps you all grow as individuals as well, doesn't it? In terms of actually getting exposed to different cultures, different ways of life, and stuff like that as well. And being able to embrace that, I would say, has always got to be something anybody relocating to the Middle East, whether it be Dubai or another country, is being adaptable, being flexible, most definitely to actually embrace other cultures. I think that's
critical. But if you do miss home, James, or anyone, that there's such a big expat community from all the different communities all over the world. You can find your favorite restaurant from back home, your different foods, different shops to buy different types of groceries which you might only find in your native country. So yeah, if you get homesick, there's always that option there to sort of rekindle the So
yeah.
And brunch is a good idea as well. There's lots of fun stuff to do at the weekends. Going back to the personal stuff. Not that I'm going to skydive when I'm back, but there's a lot of fun things you can do over there as well, isn't there?
Absolutely.
You mentioned
Tell you
sports,
what,
John.
James, there'd be a queue of people watching to watch you jump out of a plane.
I think a couple of you probably want to push me out of one. Yeah, I was going to say. Enough of that.
Can we do a quick whip round? Yeah.
Raise up some funds to chuck me out of a plane. Thanks, guys.
One of the positives, I mean, is that you're never really going to get to be part of developing countries in many parts in the world. You know, I remember when I first moved to Dubai, you know, I think the key thing is that if you look at the world, you're dealing with, you know, if some of the MEP work that people have done in the UK are refurbishments of old listed buildings, or this is developing countries, brand new infrastructure. You know, we've seen now that's happening in Saudi Arabia, it happened in Qatar. There's a wave of brand new environments being created, you know, projects and the kind of vision that people have had, and you see that happening in front of you. You wouldn't get to see that in any part of Europe, you know, and be part of that developing a country and actually leaving a legacy, to be fair. And that personally is something I think a lot of people are involved in doing with all of these projects, which is a huge positive. You just wouldn't get that in many other parts of the world than the Middle East.
Yeah, I think that's right. And what's also true is the opportunity for people coming out of the UK with the refurb experience, so in Dubai in particular, is that actually now there's a lot of building stock that's getting to 15, 20 years old that desperately needs refurbishing. And actually that is a skill that is fairly rare on the ground. There aren't that many, at WME, we've done a number of refurbs, and there are people that have done these kind of things, and they're really complicated jobs. They're not easy. And people that have that experience, there is an option, you know, that is a route into this market, because, you know, there's a lot of shopping malls that need tidying up and hotels that need refreshing, and, you know, all of these buildings that are kind of were thrown up in the early 90s now need quite a lot of work. And obviously, the worst thing they can do is just rip them all down and start again. So yeah, there's an opportunity at the other side of that coin as well.
Yeah. It is coming through. You can start with my building if you like, you know, if you want.
And what about the challenges, guys? We talked through the positives. There's obviously plenty, but I think it's good to give a bit of a balanced overview of what it's actually like living and working there. That it's not necessarily, you know, a holiday. The tax-free money is great, but what sort of pressures and what sort of challenges are people going to face?
So clearly, I think we've sort of mentioned it a bit in some of the earlier points, but, you know, because the programs are so aggressive in the projects here, obviously that leads to some pretty intense times in terms of working hours. It's not always the case. I mean, all of us on this call are striving to make sure that we stop that and reduce that as much as possible with the teams, but just because of where we are, the kind of expectations, you know, these crazy programs have become the norm and we have to do it. So sometimes that means that, you know, you're working weekends and you're working evenings to get things out. Like I say, not all the time, but when we are all doing our best to stop it, but it is part for the course over here. You know, you will work longer hours. No one on this call does a 9 to 5, I'm sure of it. You know, I think the regular hours would be, I don't know what they are. I think it's probably 9 hours a day. Is it the standard hours? I would suggest that everyone on this call is doing more than that on a weekly basis, you know. So that is one of the challenges for sure. But I mean, it's rewarding in its way, because you get to see designed and constructed lots of projects in your time when you're over here. Like I said earlier, in the UK, you might work on a couple of projects that never get built, or it takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to get them finished. Here, you could work on the same 5 years, you might see 20 projects through, you know, or more. So the rewards are, in that respect, are great. But yeah, there is a very strong work ethic in the region.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, yeah, if look, from a pure work perspective, if you're going to pick a challenge, it's the pressure. You know, the pace can be utterly relentless on projects, and to the point of unreasonableness and beyond. I mean, famously, again, me and Scott the same works on a job, and I think we delivered something like between 50 and 100, I forget the exact number, individual buildings in the space of 2 months. It was the most insane thing I've ever been involved in on Jumeirah Open Beach. It was, you know, people working night and day to get this thing done, and we got it done by hook or by crook. But you know, there were people sleeping under their desks. It was that kind of job, and that does happen here, and there's no denying it. But as I say, there are a lot of rewards, but from a work perspective, the pressure and the pace can get fairly extreme, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I'd say there's competition as well. A lot of people do want to relocate to the Middle East, and that means that there's always going to be someone potentially who work that bit extra harder than you. So you have to step up your game, work smart, really be effective with your time, prioritizing tasks, and it makes sense to read some books on sort of internal project and time management. And we do help some of our staff do that, because you can give them a list of 10, 12 things, and then they just get a bit flustered, and it's about sitting down and going, right, what needs to be delivered on which days this week? What can we push to the next week? Actually, how long is that going to take you? Okay, that's going to take you 1 hour, 2 hours. Well, we haven't got 40 hours there. We've actually got 30 hours of work. So here's another 5 tasks. If you actually break it down into time-based, then you can manage it. But there is the client expectation, the late night phone calls from the client at 10, 11 o'clock at night, or first thing in the morning, or on a weekend when you're trying to enjoy some family time. And yeah, when you get to sort of like more senior positions, it's expected, because the life and the work kind of mix in together and become one. So you really have to enjoy what you do and have a passion for it. And none of us would be here if we didn't have a passion for MEP design in our various different sectors, and sort of live and breathe it, and also believe in what we're doing. I think if Irfan, you said about leaving a legacy and working on these projects which will be looked back in 50 years time, 100 years time, and you can be proud that, you know, you can pass to your grandchildren and say, I was there when that project went up, I was involved in it. And that's you know, going back to a positive, but that's the positive that comes with the challenge of just the demands from the clients and expectations.
Yeah. And I think, you know, client expectation, you know, it's always very high in the Middle East. You know, they want the biggest, the largest, the latest innovation. Yeah, but they want it in, you know, half the time compared to like a UK project.
And
a quarter of the budget.
Yeah. And it's just something you've got to manage, you know. And I think, you know, one thing that I think is a challenge that, you know, people, you know, coming out to the Middle East will face is, you know, you're working in, you know, huge teams, you know, and not everyone's located in the Middle East. You could have architects, you know, in America. You could have, you know, a support team in, you know, India or the Philippines. And, you know, you've got to be agile and adaptable, because things are moving around all the time. And like Nick said at the start, you know, sometimes you've got to make decisions very quickly, you know, with not, you know, without having all like kind of the information you need to make an informed decision. And I think that's just something that, you know, comes with the territory of working on these kind of, you know, huge complex projects that, you know, happen, you know, frequently in the Middle East, that you just got to get to grips with when you come out.
And I think it's fair to say that it isn't for everybody, and some people will come out and they'll try it, and they either won't be able to adapt to the pace of life, they won't be able to make those decisions, that maybe they're not very good at time management, and they will hate it, and they'll be back in the UK in 6 months to a year, you know. And that's just being honest. It's not trying to put anybody off. Cool. It is that kind of place, you know. Some people just won't adapt to it.
Yeah. Some people get drastically homesick, don't they?
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, yeah, you're actually right. You know, obviously we're talking a lot about work, but you need to, you know, obviously the world's a smaller place than it was before, and obviously technology like this allows you to stay in contact with people. But you know, the truth of the matter is, you're coming out of the UK, you know, you're taking a suitcase, and you might be on your own, or you might be with a partner, and you're packing up and you're moving to the other side of the world, to a culture you don't know, to people you don't know. And as Scott and I think a couple of other people mentioned before, generally the community here is extremely welcoming, because everybody's done it before and everybody understands what you're going through.
They know the pain.
But yeah, I mean, just from a personal example for myself, you know, like when me and my wife had my first child, I went from worrying about what beach I was going to be dancing on to, the next day standing there, or not next day, a couple of days later with a newborn baby. And because I didn't have my family with me, I didn't have grandparents, I didn't have other people or a support network that you need in that situation. It was just us, and it was scary, and it's those kind of things that you don't necessarily think about. And you've got to think about as well, your family. What happens to a member of your family, and you're 24 hours away at the absolute earliest before you're able to get on a plane and go home. And there are certain times and certain things that happen that make you realise you're a long way from home. And again, that needs to be factored into the thinking as well.
Yeah, that's definitely the one that certainly resonates with me quite a lot now, especially a few years back when my father got very ill, very, very short notice, and it was like, oh, you need to get home now, yeah. And the next thing you know, you're in a taxi trying to get to the airport just to get on any flight back to the UK to get there in time. Fortunately, I managed to do it, but that's when you start realising you're a long way from home. Yeah.
And what about the cost of living, guys? Just to sort of touch on a bit more reality for people. There is obviously lots of benefits, as we've talked about. There's some challenges. What would you sort of give as I know it's difficult in some ways. Everybody has different expectations of living, but
Dubai can be as expensive. It can be as expensive as you want, or it can be as reasonable as you want. There's a big scale. You can spend, say, $1 on a sweet potato in your supermarket, or you can go and spend $5 on the same sweet potato somewhere else. You can buy a $5,000 car or $1 million car. I think people who look at if you look at the news and you see media and you see Dubai promotes glamour, the riches, you see the supercars, the mega yachts, hotels, villas with pools. You have that in any country, and it's a small part of Dubai. It's just, I think, made more apparent, or it's a marketing tool for Dubai. But in reality, I've seen over the last 5 years, the cost of living has come down. There's much more options in terms of accommodation, different villa communities, apartments, and there's much more of a mid-range option now, including restaurants, bars, because ultimately Dubai wants to attract everyone, and you can't just attract the super wealthy rich. You need to have a bit of an all-round, and that goes for the tourism and also the people that live here. So I've traveled a lot, and I think London now is more expensive than Dubai, and Australia as well. I've found more expensive than Dubai. So
I found that quite interesting when I was at home in the last couple of months, and I went and did the supermarket shop. And I went, oh, there's not that much of a difference now in the meat prices and things like that from Dubai, and it's just like this is crazy, yeah. Beforehand you were paying twice the price here, but now it's not far off, yeah. Apart from dishwater tablets.
Yeah, I think you're pretty right. I mean, even I've done that sometimes. Gone to a petrol station and thought, just bought a few things and thought that's a lot of money, but. I guess the thing that I'm just going to tie this back to everybody talking about challenges, because there is a reward of tied to what there are remuneration benefits within the Middle East, but it's down to the choices that you make across where you want to live and how you want to live. And I know a lot of people that move to Dubai, or I speak to, and they start asking me, well, where should I live? And they speak to their friends and they start talking about Jumeirah Beach residence, or they start talking about the middle of Riyadh, or start talking about lots of different places that are glitz and glam. And if you want to be able to look at long term, do your numbers, but there's a lot of options available. But I think the main thing is do your maths before you're actually looking to accept that offer, and do some research out here on the ground before you accept offers, and decide what you need to be able to live on. It's really important. I mean, we go through cost of living analysis with candidates before they accept offers with us, even before we even make them offers, because we need to make sure that we are making people offers that are sustainable for their lifestyle. So if you've got two children, yourself, your wife, or your wife and your husband, 2 children, that's going to cost. There's factors to be involved. So do your homework. There's rent, there's car rentals, schooling allowances, companies do or do not give nowadays, and the trend is that most organizations don't offer schooling. Other organizations will. So when you look at cost of living, I think there's many factors that are there. And if I spread that across the MENA region, you know, KSA or Saudi is going to be a lot more expensive at the moment because there's a big influx of people and not much accommodation available. Take those types of things into consideration. It's pretty much what happened in Qatar 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. And different places are going to cost different amounts simply because they have more a need for staff there. So do your numbers before you come. There is definitely a lifestyle available for everyone, but you need to make sure that the lifestyle you're choosing is right for you.
I usually say to most people when they come is that you probably won't save any money for 18 months. And the reason why you won't do that is because you'll do lots of things. You know, you'll get sucked into the wave of going out and doing stuff and things like that and enjoying the place, because you do feel like you're on holiday. Yeah,
it's like holiday. It's like holiday the first few years. You feel like a holiday.
Yeah, usually what it is that it's about 18 months. That's when you realise, oh, okay, we've done all that now. Now we know what our routine is. We've got the accommodation in the right place that we like now. We're near a group of friends where the kids are handy for school and things like that. And you've settled into the life, and all of a sudden, then you're starting to save a little bit, and then you're having that nice holiday and things like that. Yeah.
It's also worth to add just a final point on it, to add that in the Middle East, obviously there are no pensions. There is no sort of support in that regard. So whilst you're here and you see your first salary and you think, well, that's a lot more than the UK, you have to consider your future. There is no safety net here. You know, if you want to retire, you need to plan for your retirement. So in the UK, you'd obviously get workplace pensions and national insurance and all that kind of stuff, which you can still pay into over here, but your workplace pensions and any sort of retirement fund has to come out of your salary. And that's really something people should keep at the front of their mind when they look at the salaries that they're being offered to come to the region.
And when it comes to that, educate yourself. Learn yourself and learn how to do that yourself, because there's plenty of people who'd like to help you, but they're only looking after themselves. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think people are a bit more savvy with that kind of thing now, though, because I mean, if say when I first came out at as I say, in the financial crisis, and a lot of people had been out during the kind of the gold rush years of 2006, 2007, and what you saw is people were living so far beyond their means, it was absolutely ridiculous. And when the music stopped and these people found themselves unemployed, and there was just a huge wave of redundancies, people were ruined. They had nothing. They'd saved nothing. They'd overextended themselves on credit cards. They've got cars they couldn't afford. They were living in places that they couldn't afford. And I do think that period is still a bit of a cautionary tale. Obviously you do get people that are coming out and doing their own thing and kind of like maxing out the credit cards. But I think that history still remains, and people are a lot more cautious and careful now that that it is a place that can be volatile. The music could stop at some point, and as Scott said, you've got to think about your future, because there's no if you're here and you're unemployed, you're out of the country. Within a not too long period of time, you're out of the country, and you've got to plan for that, and you've got to accept that's a possibility, and make sure that if the music stops, you're okay, and you can walk away and go, do you know what? I had a great time, I made decent money, and I've set myself up. And if you can tick all those boxes, then you win, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Excellent. And excuse me, apart from brunches, what can you expect in the first 6 months?
Just brunches,
I would say. I would say that your first 6 months is going to be a little bit chaotic. You're looking for the right places to live. You're looking to get to know your colleagues. You come into a country and you're straight into work. I think most people don't have the luxury of having a run-in period of 3 or 4 weeks of being in Dubai. Most people are just coming in and getting onboarded. Most companies, I think nearly all companies, offer you 1 month's worth of accommodation. That's pretty normal. All organizations will help you with your visas, depending on the level of seniority that you're coming into. I think most organizations will fund family visas and other things like that, so you can expect that. Personal recommendation is if you're coming here with your family, come here by yourself initially and set things up so that you can take time to make sure that you've looked at things on the ground, because things are very chaotic in terms of paperwork, passports, degree attestation. So a lot of paperwork that is involved. So research that up front as to what you need. Talk to your people that you're being recruited by, or the HR departments or talent acquisition teams, about what you can do to prepare beforehand. If you're thinking about coming to Dubai or Middle East now, try and get that information, that research done now as to what you probably need to prepare for. Don't wait for the offer and don't wait for the mobilization. If you've made that decision, do it beforehand. And there's lots of places you can, get that information from, readily available online. So I guess that's there. And as you said, brunches, lots of brunches. And I think you'll probably be a little bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's also the Dubai Stone as well. Be prepared to put on some weight. Dubai has an amazing array of food. The food, there's a lot of foodies here, a lot of great restaurants, chefs from all over the world set up restaurants here, and everything is just very attainable. So the Dubai Stone is something. We think we've all about lost it now, 8 years in, but
just one, yeah.
I keep putting mine on and off again, so
yo-yo.
Yeah, that's right. But I think just for me, in summary, is just be ready for a lot of change. Changes. And be ready for what you can do with that. But embrace it. It's going to be difficult. And in the first 6 months, you might think, I want to leave here. But with the right HR team and talent acquisition support, the people that you're working with, use them to help you get grounded.
And you don't always get it right first time. So I would say that most people I know that have moved to Dubai would move accommodation within the first year, because they thought they'd picked the right place, but then it's like, it didn't really quite work out, or it wasn't working, and maybe the family were unhappy because you'd come out yourself and you'd selected where you want to go, and then they came out and went, why did you pick this place? And it was like, well, it's great because it's handy for my work. It's like, yeah, but it's not handy for anything else. And you will make mistakes, and usually it's because you picked the wrong thing or you've done the wrong thing and things like that. And that's the sort of thing that could put strain on a relationship. But if you then agree that you maybe need to spend a little bit of that money to get the right thing and get the right setup, it's worth doing. Yeah,
I think also making the first 6 months, expanding your network, making friends, your hobbies. If you play football, cricket, you go sailing, you're avid go-karter, join a club, meet people, because the quicker you feel settled and not isolated and alone, there's a much better chance of you staying here and enjoying it, and not just spending all of your time working at the office till 11 p.m. at night and then not having an existence. So that's important. But from a company perspective, like most of the companies, when you come over here, you'll get to meet all the different facets of the business. They'll take you to some of the existing projects that they've done, projects that are in progress, so that you really get a feel of what the company's about, the types of projects they're working on, the clients, so you get a good exposure and learn as much about the business as possible. Because coming from leadership roles, we want you to settle in as quickly as possible, and the best way to do that is to sort of introduce you to everyone, the work we do, and maybe actually the role that you were hired for 6 months down the line, we might identify that there's another role that you're much better suited at, and that's the flexibility that we have here, being sort of smaller than the sort of head office organisations.
Excellent. And just moving on from that, thank you guys. But for opportunities for grads and intermediates, I'm getting quite a lot of applicants actually, and people reaching out to me from all parts of the world that are grads and intermediates. What do you see as opportunities locally?
Yeah, I think, I've seen on this one, probably everyone on this call has seen it over the last kind of 10, 15 years, there has been an increase in local talent, like in the Middle East. I think a lot of universities in, Dubai, Sharjah, and in the Middle East region, they've all got MEP or business services type degrees. So if I was, looking to come out, as a graduate or an intermediate, I'd really look at how you can differentiate yourself. So, in terms, what we're looking for is kind of like business leaders is, certain skills. So it could be like presentation skills or communication skills, but, also software, what's going to make you stand out, computational design we mentioned, looking at Rhino, Grasshopper, BIM. So I think they're all kind of big plus points, if you're looking to come out, but also people disagree, but I feel like it's still, a fantastic place to learn if you are a graduate or an intermediate. You're working with some of the best engineers, globally, so if you surround yourself with good engineers, ultimately you're going to develop more skills, through work-based learning, mentorship and training. But I would really look at, how you can kind of set yourself aside from, other graduates. So, and I think a software is a huge part of that at the moment.
The good thing with being a graduate these days is that you're in demand. If you are an MEP graduate, you are in demand. So you've got the opportunity to look at the companies that can offer you the best wide variety of opportunity in that first year, 2 years, to try different facets of the MEP business and work out what suits you. Yeah. And if you pick the right company with the right graduate program that allows you to go through and experience all these different facets of MEP, whether you're electrical, mechanical, I mean, you should be doing a bit of both these days, and getting an understanding for that. If you find the right company that can do that out in the Middle East, you will really grow quickly as an engineer and mature quickly. The experiences and the trust that you'll be given by companies out here is amazing.
I mean, I'd agree with all of both the things yourself, Mike, you've said about local talent has really kind of come through, and there's a lot of competition between overseas and local talent now because people are graduating from local universities, and our intake has certainly switched from looking for more graduates from overseas because it just was non-existent in the Middle East to now looking at even local, when I say national talent, is coming through that space as well. And they're very good. So I think it's to be aware that there is competition. It wouldn't just be that you would, look at sending your graduates, so you graduate from a UK university or European university, and what it was like 10 years ago, where we'd probably just recruit from that space. But the key thing that I would like to say is that in line with that and in step with that, organizations and even such as us have matured their graduate recruitment programs and graduate intake programs. And I know a lot of yourselves have also started to develop a lot of graduate training and how that actually works. And I guess the main thing is, if you are a graduate and you're looking for a career in MEP, the level of experience that you can gain from coming out to Middle East as opposed to just a standardized graduate training program in the UK is just very different. I mean, a lot of people on this call have heard what you would be involved in from a project perspective as an engineer or senior engineer, but imagine getting exposed to that. And that's the real opportunity graduates have coming out to Middle East, that you will really accelerate your understanding in multiple facets of mechanical or MEP very, very quickly and be able to then accelerate your career. So I think that's the benefit really in terms of opportunities for graduates and intermediaries as to where they are at the moment as opposed to coming to Middle East.
Excellent. And in terms of making yourself stand out more, I assume enthusiasm and being keen to learn and take on not too much, but enough tasks, I assume has got to be something you guys look for, is it? What would you say about people's character? What do you look for?
Taking ownership. Taking ownership is something that I think that I see people are lacking, and that's not just from graduates. It's just a whole range. Taking ownership of a task and seeing it through to completion. And yes, you might need to go outside of your job description, but you've got colleagues there to help you, to assist. The internet, there's technology, databases, documents, standards that can all be there, and references to use. So it's what I most look for is people who, the people in my organisation who've grown the quickest and developed the quickest, for those who say, right, John, no, leave it with me, I'll get it sorted, I'll take it through, and I get a happy client. They come to me, all the jobs signed off, done before the time frames that we were supposed to do it in. So there's a financial benefit for the company, happy client, happy staff, and that's really key. I think the ownership of taking ownership, seeing something through to the end.
Yeah, I agree, John. I think for me it's the same. Like it's mainly about attitude, as you say, ownership and enthusiasm and the character of the person, more so than for me, sort of technical. Technical can be learned. As you said, there are localization aspects people need to get up to speed with, but we've got technical people in the region that know all that, that can give the people that knowledge. You can't teach attitude and the character. And as we said earlier, you know, this can be a tough place to work, and you need those people with that right attitude to be able to
grits.
Grits,
And-
yeah,
Grit
and-
and a good,
and
and a
just-
good
just-
work ethic.
yeah.
And just to back up that as well, guys. We do assessments on aptitude and attitude. Those are the key assessments that are there. You know, or of analysing graduates. What's your approach, your passion, your attitude, the reasons for why you actually chose to do what you wanted to do. Those, I think, are the key things that we assess when looking from an in-house point of view as well. So anything else, like you say, both of you guys say we can be taught, right? That's really the reason why they're coming into the business.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that, and I think that, you know, certainly the Max Fordham's where I started, they really didn't recruit MEP graduates, people that had done MEP as a degree, and the reason for that is because they felt that they would already be too in a box. They'd know what they'd been taught, so they hired someone with a generalised degree. The guy who sat next to me had done astrophysics, because what they wanted is they want people who could think. They wanted people who could look at a problem and break it down and come at it. And I think all of the best graduates are people like that, who can just look at a problem. And we're seeing, actually, I think I can see him on this call, so I won't mention his name. One of the best graduates we've had in a long, long time is someone who's actually brought in some skills in programming and digitalization that we didn't have. It's just something that was inherently he's good at. You know, his part came through his university degree, and he was doing things and looking at problems in a way that we weren't. So it's like, okay, you can do that, go with it, run with it. You know, you explore your talents. You know, we can teach you how to size a duct. We can teach you how to size a pipe. That's easy. It's the other stuff that's hard, and that's attitude and dealing with people and understanding the business and dealing with clients. That's the bit that people find difficult, and you know that's just about the individual rather than, you know, whether or not someone's taught them how to use a psychometric chart.
Yeah, I mean it's getting that fine balance of listening and absorbing information and the skills and what's going on around about you, and then speaking up when you say, actually, we could be doing it this way. If you get that balance right, you will succeed so quickly in this
100%.
industry. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you, guys. And we've got a few questions in the Q&A as well. Farhed has asked, he feels his CV's and his background's incredibly strong in consulting and design, including design management and O&M. And he's tried networking and messaging on LinkedIn to introduce himself and stand out. Are there any other tips that you guys as directors and hiring managers and heads of talent acquisition would give as a bit of a tip for anyone from the UK?
I think it's important that we do get contacted a lot on LinkedIn, and it's very hard to go through, and even via emails, I can get upward of 250 a day, and it's impossible to read all of those and also do what we're supposed to be doing. So in terms of the best routes, is often there are on our websites, we will have job postings for open opportunities. It's also quite easy to see who are the active sort of recruiters in the region as well. They'll obviously be posting a lot, and then it's reaching out to them, having a covering letter, demonstrating, you know, your abilities. The recruiters who specialize in the area, they will know which companies are recruiting and what upcoming roles there are. So going through them as a sort of first port of call for us definitely helps with the vetting process.
The other thing as well is, I mean, LinkedIn is a great tool, you know, but if you're coming in, you're looking to get into the region and things like that, you don't want to be speaking to me. You know, you want to be speaking to the principal engineers and the associates, because they're the ones who are managing that discipline team. You know, get in touch with them on LinkedIn, because they'll be the ones that, oh, actually, we've had a bit of a chat, or, you know, they've seen your CV, and then that'll get passed on through. So that's probably a better way of going about it, you know, rather than put it into the old director who's probably not going to read it, to be honest. Which is a brutal truth, I'm afraid. You know.